for the new system.
Okay.
They were miscoded. So page 7. Still nothing new to note. And then page 8, if you look at the bottom of total expenses, I originally told you last month that I expected to be $10,000 to $15,000 in the hole, and we actually still came out okay with $5,000 with all the overages that were approved for us to spend this year. So that's pretty good, I think.
So we won't have to take anything out of the surplus you have?
Mm-mm. We were very cautious this year, very conservative with all of us coming in as new staff and, you know, not sure how things were going and what should be spent and what shouldn't be spent on. So we wanted to play it safe.
As I see it, so basically we underspent by $5,000 and came up with around $5,000 extra in revenue for the $9,900.
Exactly.
Super. Any questions of Marjorie on the financials of the SAU? Preschool.
Alright, moving on to preschool. If you'll notice, page 1 of 6, we received almost $11,000 more from tuition. And then if you look at your preschool one-on-one for Nottingham and Stratford, those actually cancel each other out on page 5 of 6. So we expense them and then we bill them out and record it as revenue. So those offset each other. Other than that, nothing on the preschool financials have changed that much. I've indicated to you throughout the year that on page 1, all of those differences are because of staffing changes that were throughout the year, which continues to page 2. Nobody has billed us for mileage over there. They didn't spend all their supply money. The biggest thing I think to note is on page 4, the last purchase that was approved by the joint board at the last meeting for Scott Rooning.
Wagons?
Yes. So,
How much were the wagons?
well, that you approved 2 purchases for him, so those are the purchases that are there, the
okay.
$3,300.
Okay, so that wasn't all wagons.
No.
The wagons he bought actually were much less than he was telling us.
Oh, good.
Can you find a deal somewhere to get what it was?
He did. He went shopping around the next day.
Yeah.
How do we deal with the balance on the preschool?
What do you mean about the surplus?
The surplus gets retained. We'll be coming back to you at a future meeting because you have quite a bit more than that in preschool, and we're going to come back to you with that.
Any other questions of Marjorie on preschool? Anything else, Marjorie?
I don't have anything.
Any other questions on anything of Marjorie?
Yeah, actually, I have just a general comment with the balance, because we redid the way we're funding the preschool. That balance can't be carried forward because the funding methodology is based on population, which will change year over year. So you can't just bring that forward because it'll affect the funding from a previous year will be different than the following year.
So are you talking about dividing it by percentage of number of students that we each had? Is that what you're saying?
We changed the funding methodology this
Right.
year that's based on population, right?
Right.
Next year, population is different, so the breakout of that fund will be different next year. So you can't just bring it forward. It wouldn't be equitable.
Correct.
You gotta start with a clean slate
Right.
every year.
We'll bring you back a suggestion that you can vote on, because you've got money in there that was collected previously that was at I believe 33% across the board. So we need to deal with that differently than we deal with this. So we'll
Exactly.
come back with a
It's got to be
recommendation.
broken out.
Thank you.
Because you're right, it will change every year now.
I think it makes sense.
Right.
Makes sense.
even a blind squirrel gets a nut every now and again, right?
Any other questions,
I've
Marjorie?
been waiting a long time to use Anything else from Marjorie?
Anything else from Marjorie? Nope. Okay, thank you, Marjorie.
Thank
you.
As far as I know, you can go home. Lucky you. Okay, special education report. Gail Mills was going to do the special, we did meet. There's nothing earth-shattering to report, but she did have a report and she's not here tonight. And I would ask if you minded if we put this off to next month so that Gail can do her report. I don't want to take her thunder. Does anybody have a problem with that?
No.
Okay, so we would like the special education report on the
Yep.
next agenda. What?
I do have a question, Tim.
Oh.
Did you need a representative?
We do.
Because Tina was our representative?
Yes, we do. And Brian and I have talked a couple of times, and I'm hoping that you guys will resolve that before our next meeting.
Yeah. I don't know when, maybe you could give us some more information about when that committee meets. So
Well, it's
anybody
always
may be
during the
interested.
day, and we've been meeting in the,
This is what Tim's talking about. Okay.
we meet during the day. All right, do you work full-time?
No,
You look like you're about as retired as I am, so,
Well, yeah, if they don't call me for Southern Rochester.
okay.
Except in the Rochester School
Okay.
But if I know when the meeting is, I don't.
Yes, and normally we would set that up, but we were kind of waiting for one of the members. But we generally meet like in the middle of the day, and an hour, 2 hours at the most. It's we just discuss. The biggest thing, if you're going to be on it, is to get a copy of the special education audit report that we had done. It's very comprehensive, and it'll give you a really good idea of where we're trying to go. But I think it would be just more appropriate to let Gail
We
come
can
in and
send
do the
it.
report.
We can send it to him. If
Norm,
Norm's going to be
would
on
you
it,
like a hard copy? Or would you like it
No, just send an email.
email? Oh, okay.
we can email you that.
All right, so we can put that out to next meeting? Okay. Superintendent's report. One second.
Okay, on page 21, you will see a nomination for occupational therapist, Holly Crowley. You'll see on 23 the resume and the hire form recommendation from Scott Rooney.
And this is a position for all three schools and the high school?
Correct, where needed.
Where needed.
Move that we accept the personal report dated July 28th, 2014.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does anybody have any questions about this candidate?
So I'm going to ask you, Bob. I see that Holly received her master's in 2012, her bachelor's in 2010. So does that mean, how many years has she worked as a occupational therapist? That's what I'm trying to figure out here. Since she
Filling the filling occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech therapist is very difficult. We've been very fortunate to find the people that we have, and Holly is certainly one of the people that we're fortunate to have.
Okay. I know they're hard to fill. That was it.
Any more questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Anyone want to abstain? Passes unanimously.
On last meeting, we talked a little bit about goals for the upcoming year. On page 25, you'll see a draft of some goals. I wanted to bring it to the board for feedback, for consideration, for any suggested changes. Once we have agreed upon the goals, I'm going to take it back to the people that work in my office, and we will bring you back how we're going to measure those goals and the things that we're going to do to make sure that those goals are accomplished. So right now, these are just broad goals, and like I said, the ones that you think we need to focus on, then we will bring back a more inclusive outline.
I think the fact that we have all three of us are negotiating a contract this year, that's gonna be time consuming, and with 3 new building principals, that's probably gonna be time consuming, so. That's a lot. Could I ask what your role will be in assisting us with negotiating and presenting the teacher's contract?
My role is to provide you with information, run any reports or anything through the business administrator, to find out legal advice if you have questions on negotiation, and anything else asked of me by the negotiating team.
So when we're actually, because Brian and I are the Stratford negotiating
Mhm.
team, when we're actually in those meetings, will you be present in the meetings?
Yes.
And with the, will we have the business administrator as well? Or?
Most likely not.
No, okay.
Is it appropriate for you to try to play some sort of mediator type role in negotiations?
I think it's appropriate for me to try to get both sides to agree to a contract. And if that means providing information, if it means trying to clarify things, I think it's beneficial to have an agreement that we can bring forward to the public. So, I think that that would be appropriate.
I guess not being on the Northwood negotiating team this year, but I think, well, first of all, it may not seem like a big list, but I think there's a lot of things here under all of these things. So I in terms of what's on the list, I know this came from you with maybe some input, and I feel comfortable with the list. I just want to make sure that we're setting up reasonable expectations for you and the rest of the SAU staff, because I think that's important to make sure that the goals are achievable goals. I think specifically to the negotiating and the teachers' contracts, it's great having that information. That's always really helpful in the legal input and that piece of it. I think where I would hope maybe value could be put as more that mediator role, and just trying to. Sometimes they get contentious. Sometimes people are saying the same things but saying it in 2 different languages.
Right.
So being that person that helps to bridge the gap between the 2 parties, I think, at least my experience last year, I think there's a lot of value, and to the extent you can play that role without overstepping any boundaries, I think that could add a lot of value to all 3 schools in terms of getting to a contract that not only that both parties agree on, but a contract that can go in front of the towns to get approved.
But it's my understanding that you're on the administration's team.
I work for the school boards.
You work for the school board, so he can't be an effective
Well,
mediator.
no, but I mean, I think a lot of what happened, at least again speaking, my personal experience, there are times when both parties are essentially saying the same things but speaking different languages and don't believe. I think you're over here and I think I'm over here. The reality is we're actually here, but we're missing it. And so not in maybe mediation's not the right word, but I think.
Yeah, I think in a formal binding
Translator.
way, I don't think that that's appropriate. To be maybe a calm head of reason to help the proceedings along, I think that might be appropriate.
I also, I worked with Dr. Godomsky last year on the teacher negotiations, and I'm working with him this year on our teacher negotiations. What I like that he does is he brings clarity to some of the discussion, and sometimes we just need that. Because frankly, the teachers have one view, the school board might have another view, and sometimes he's just been able to clarify what each side is thinking and help us go forward. So I found a lot of value in having him there.
But just to be clear, the position that he supports is the school board's
Absolutely,
position.
and he does. So far, with us, that's what he's done. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes, Dave?
Well, one of our special meetings back a month or so ago, we also had a discussion in some, about medical insurance going as 3 towns. So I would guess, is that appropriate then, for you to try to lay some groundwork with 3 different groups? That we are, and I don't mean to speak for the board, but I think we might be leaning to see if we could get one policy for all 3 that would save us all money.
We're
both
already
sides.
getting that
Okay.
information.
It's in the minutes from.
That, you may see that at the next meeting, and it may be in September. But we have given out asked for the census data. That's been out, and
Right.
I don't know as we've got that back.
Not
Yeah.
yet.
That goes
Not yet.
to, is it school care? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's been sent out. So
Okay.
we've got that. We've got from our insurance carrier all of the information that is needed, and we sent that forward. Now we're just waiting for
Yeah. So
the figures to
it's-
compare.
I'm hoping things move slowly sometime, but I'm hoping that maybe we'll have some of that information in our August meeting, and that will give us some idea whether there's some savings for everybody or not. But that's moved right along.
3 years ago, when we had a different administration at the SAU, I know that the 2 people who negotiated for Stratford, the chair ended up having to actually type the contract herself. So we then expect that the SAU would, once we all organize what we've all agreed on what we want, would the SAU then type the contract for us?
Well, I do think that's part of our service as an SAU. We'll help in any way we can. Please remember, if you need numbers run from Marjorie, or you need something typed, or you need the contract followed through on, as much lead time as you can give us is appreciated, because when we get behind the 8 ball and we're trying to run numbers before a meeting at 6 o'clock, that's when mistakes are made, and we don't like to make mistakes. So the more lead time you can give us, the better we can do.
I think the insurance information from what we've been holding public forums to get input from our community as far as what they want us to look at for negotiations, and the insurance is such a big issue. So we really can't do too much until we have those numbers, right, Brian? I think that's a big part of
Just a
it.
guesswork until we get price. Bill?
Well, one of the things that came up during the past year, and I'm not sure if you've got it covered here or not, and if you think you do, just kind of point out where, was historically we've had some administrative, I'll call them challenges, as it relates to personnel records and the maintenance of them, that at least in the case of Northwood ended up costing us a decent chunk of money. Is there any efforts planned on trying to recover information that already exists, or is it about just improving the documentation of discipline issues going forward?
We're trying to recover existing information and clean up the files. You have a lot of files that are a mess, and we're trying to go through those. The technical term. We're going through them and trying to straighten them out. But even more than that, we're trying to make sure that from this point forward, the files are neat, orderly. The evaluation plan, the documentation. I talked about having an admin council agenda and talking about that. I think all of that, as we go forward, is going to be a lot better. Stuff that's happened in the past, that's a little more sketchy.
Are these SAU files or are these district files that he's talking about?
Both. Because ultimately, your district files for HR are housed here. That was one of the issues before when we found a lot of things in HR when you had bookkeepers in each of your buildings. The bookkeepers were keeping some of the HR materials. Our office was keeping the official HR materials, and then there was some overlap and some gaps. So now that we've got that piece centralized, Linda Osborne's been working diligently to make sure that we've got all of the appropriate information on the insurance and all of those things on file here and not duplicated.
So would it be appropriate that by the end of the year we conduct an internal audit of all our HR files? Since it seems that they're, up until this year, you just stated they're in a state of flux.
I don't know
And
if they
it
were in a
seems-
state
it
of
seems
flux. They were not organized as well as they should have been.
In a state of disarray.
Yes.
Okay, I'll say my.
Disarray, perhaps.
Okay. Would it be appropriate that by the end of the year we have an audit conducted on those files? Because they are, as you rightly pointed out, files that put us in an interesting position should they be needed.
We could certainly do that.
Should we put that as a goal, continue to reorganize personnel files or something like that? Because it's not actually listed here. I know you're working on it, so you would be continuing to.
Yeah, these goals were